VAMP, Chapter 15. The next morning, while I was in the shower, Aden went downstairs to get some food. When I got out of the bathroom, he was acting like a little boy anxiously waiting to open up his birthday present. "I have a surprise," he said, as I dried my hair with a towel. "Oh, really? I thought I saw all your surprises last night," I said, joking and smiling, because he'd definitely surprised me the night prior, on many levels. Baby, there's a lot more where that came from. Back to childish joy. "No! I thought since it was such a gorgeous day, we could go for a motorcycle ride to Mason's house. I rented one while I was downstairs," he said with a big smile on his face and dangling the key from his left hand. "Really?" I said, genuinely excited. "In all my years, I've never been on a motorcycle." "It's weird to think you still have things you experience for the first time. I would have thought you'd tried everything by now," he said with his own wink and sly grin. I smiled and finished getting dressed. Then I called Mason to let him know we were on our way. We walked downstairs through the lobby, and outside was a black-on-black two-seater Harley-Davidson. "Put these on," Aden said, handing me a pair of leather gloves and a helmet. "You're giving me the helmet?" I asked, staring at him. "I've got one too," he said, smiling and showing me the other helmet. I put them on and climbed behind him on the bike. "Here is where we need to go," I said, showing him the map I had printed off earlier. "It should take us about an hour and a half." "Okay, you ready?" Aden asked. He had his hair pulled back again and those aviators on. I found him so incredibly sexy that I thought about hauling him back upstairs and having my way with him, again. Instead, I said, "Yes, sir." Aden turned on the bike and I listened to the engine purr. He revved the bike and lifted his feet from the pavement, and we began to move. The route we had to take led us along the shoreline of the ocean. It was so beautiful and warm. We passed so many gorgeous mansions all along the way. All of them were different colors, shapes, and sizes, and designs. As I looked at each house, I couldn't help but wonder who lived in them. When we got to Mason's house, I rang the intercom on his gate. Mason had a gorgeous, big, expensive house, which only added to his love when trying to charm women into bed with him. When you enter through the gate, you see a circular brick driveway that has a fountain and garden in the middle. The house itself is white, and you don't see much of it until you circle around the center garden, because there are trees and plants growing everywhere. Mason wanted the house to look like it was planted right in the middle of the rainforest, and he had done well with his vision. I pushed the intercom. "Hey Mason, it's Gretchen and Aden. Can you open the gate?" "Hey there, park under the carport and come on in," said Mason through the intercom. We parked under the carport and headed up the front steps. Aden was feeling overwhelmed. He was looking around at the big white house and black columns and the two huge doors we were about to walk through. "Wow," was all he could muster. "Yeah, he's a show-off," I said, opening the door. "I heard that, pretty lady," Mason said, walking over to me, wrapping his arms around me while picking me up and spinning me around. "You know it's true," I said, smiling up at him when he set me down. Then we turned our attention to Aden, who was standing with his hands in his pockets, taking it all in. "This is my boyfriend Aden," I said, walking back over to him. They were both sizing each other up. Mason was feeling slightly jealous, but not threatened at all. "Nice to meet you," he said, offering his hand to Aden, who shook it back and said, "It's nice to meet you too." "So what brings you here today?" Mason said, turning back to me. "Well, I wanted to talk to you about making a few things for me, and I wanted to see how Project X and Project Z plus Y were going." "Well, why don't we head to the basement and we'll get to work?" Aden and I followed Mason through his house and down into the basement. His basement was every man's dream. He had video games, a projector system for movies, a TV, pool table, foosball, air hockey, a bar with every liquor you could imagine. And then in the back corner there was a bookcase filled with books. He tilted down 5 different books in a certain order, and the bookcase opened like a door. "I feel like I'm in an episode of Scooby-Doo," said Aden, and Mason just laughed. When we walked through the bookcase, Mason closed it behind him, and we were in his laboratory. It was one huge room. One wall was completely covered from floor to ceiling in drawers that had Latin writing on them. Another wall was glass shelving, which was filled with glass bottles of different liquids. The room was totally soundproof, and I think it had every piece of science equipment that was ever made. In the middle of the lab was a big circular wooden table. Aden was over there looking at the writings on it. "This is Mason's alchemy table. He places the chemicals and elements in the middle and then goes to the computer that's hooked up over there, and he can draw out what he wants made, and the table arranges the elements into whatever composition he desires, I said, walking over and standing beside Aden. So what can I make you? Asked Mason. I need 3 daggers, titanium, tungsten, and platinum. Have you made anything new recently? I asked. No, I've been working on some projects for the government lately, though I haven't had much time to be creative, he said, looking bummed. How's Project X and Z plus Y coming? I asked. Project X is almost done. It's going to work great. I'm still having a lot of problems with Z plus Y. In fact, it's a good thing you stopped by. Can I take about 20 vials of blood, or is that too much? Sure, I should be fine. I fed recently, I said, sitting down on the chair and winking at Aden, who blushed ever so slightly. What do you need the blood for? Asked Aden. I'm having Mason work on a few tests for me, I said, rolling up my sleeve. Mason came over and wrapped an elastic band around my elbow. He slid the needle in, hooked up a large vial, and I sat and watched as my blood poured into it. One after another, he filled the vials and put them into a container that he put in the fridge when he was done. I could tell he had taken more than I should have let him, but I knew I'd be fine. I felt slightly dizzy, though. He took enough blood from me to make a human pass out. I would just need to replenish my system once we got back to the hotel. This should be more than enough blood, but I want extra just in case. Then I don't have to contact you and have you mail me some again. I'm hoping I can crack it this time, Mason said, running his hand through his hair. Now, let's get those knives made. Mason walked over to the wall of drawers with labels all in Latin. He opened up 3 and brought the powdered form of each element over to the table. He mixed them up in a pile and walked over to his computer. He drew out the composition of the atoms of the dagger I wanted, and then drew out what it should look like, and then sent the message to the table. There was a bright light, and the table started shaking. You could see the particles moving around like a tornado in the middle of the table, and then slowly, piece by piece, it started to take shape. After a few minutes, the light was gone, and the table stopped shaking, and laying there in the middle of it was my dagger. Holy shit, said Aden. How does this work? Alchemy is creating things out of elements and chemicals. The number 1 law of alchemy is that everything has to be equivalent exchange. Say, for instance, I take this pencil here, and I place it on the table. I can't make a rocket ship out of the pencil. I can only use the elements in the pencil to create something else that has the exact same elements, but in a different pattern. Hence, all the drawers and the bottles, Mason said, pointing around the room. It looks like magic. Yes, it looks like magic, but really all magic is just complex science, said Mason, returning to the wall of drawers to pull more elements out and finish making my weapons. How did you find out about this? Asked Aden, as he continued to look around the room. Well, I come from a long line of alchemists. It is something passed down from generation to generation, and not genetically, like werewolves. I mean academically. My sister and I are both highly educated scientists, due greatly to our parents. We watched him work for a while longer, and then I started flipping through some of the sketches he had laid out on his desk. I had seen some of the weapons already, but became interested when I saw one that I had never seen before. What's this? I asked. On paper, it looked like a metal rod, about 1.5 feet long in length, and about 2 inches in diameter. And then it was made of 3 sections of different metal. Oh, that's something I started working on a while ago. Then it got busy with some other stuff. I haven't had time to actually build it yet. It's a new creation, though. How does it work? Do you whack someone over the head with it? No, the different sections will have different weapons hidden inside, which will pop out at the touch of a button. One side will be a scythe, kind of blade. The button in the middle will shoot out long, thin blades from each end, and the third button will shoot out spikes. Are you interested? Yeah, very much so. I'll leave you my address. When it's done, you can mail it to me. I'll wire you the money, and please send instructions this time. I don't want another mishap like the shoe incident. I set down the sketch. Just make sure you burn this once you're done with it, I said, referring to my address. As Mason finished up the rest of the daggers I needed, I found a piece of scratch paper and jotted down my address on it, and left it by his computer so it wouldn't get lost. After Mason finished my weapons, he wrapped them up in a black leather case and rolled it up and put it in a long box. I'll FedEx this in the morning, that way you won't have to worry about them asking questions at the airport. Perfect. What do I owe you? Let's settle on $4,000. That will include the rod I'll start making for you tomorrow, said Mason. I'll wire it to you this afternoon. Thanks so much for meeting with us today while we were down here. No problem. You guys can stop by any time you're here. It was really nice to meet you, Aden, said Mason as he reached for Aden's hand to give it a firm shake. It was really nice to meet you, too. Thanks for letting me see how all this works. No problem, and you're welcome here any time as well, he said. We all headed upstairs, and Mason walked us out to the motorcycle. I'll talk to you soon, he said from the bottom step. Will do. You take care as well, I said, and with that, Aden grabbed the bike, and we headed along the coast to our hotel. We stopped at a small little seaside restaurant that advertised the best chips and fish, and I was pretty convinced they were. We got back to the hotel a little after 6 that night and decided to just Netflix and chill, because our flight was leaving early in the morning. I laid in bed later that night with Aden while he slept. I watched the white sheet rise and fall on his bare chest every time he breathed, and his consistent heartbeat was a lullaby all its own. I glanced at the wrist I had bit just under an hour ago. The wound had healed perfectly. Not even a small scratch left. I smiled and snuggled up in his nook, and his arms automatically wrapped around me. This had been a good trip. I got to see the last of my family, and I got to share my story with Aden. He knew the deep, dark, twisted, and damaged parts of me now. And he didn't go running from them, or judge me because of them. He just loved them.